How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Lamed Daled, Daf 34 of Masechta BavaMetzia. Friends. Friends. Today we start the third perek of Masechta BavaMetzia. Also a famous perek. I think traditionally you learn Eilu Metzias as a kid, and then afterwards you learn Amafkid. Amafkid isn't so easy. Whatever. It is what it is. So today we're starting the third perek of BavaMetzia, perek Hamafkid. I suspect it might be a long daf because we still have kind of like half an Amud to do on Lamed Gimel, and then all of Lamed Daled, and we're going to do a bunch on Lamed Hey. So, it might be a big one, but I guess we'll see. I don't know. Without further ado, we're going to start perek Hamafkid. Here we go. Now we've seen this before in Masechta Bava Kama. I think I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I thought maybe I wouldn't, but I think I'm going to. 1 second. Alright, here we go. Says the Mishnah, Mafkid Eitzel Chaver Behema O Kalim. So if Shimon deposits by Ruvain an animal or vessels for Ruvain to watch, Vinignevu, and they got stolen. Okay, so let's assume that Ruvain is a shomer chinam. He is an unpaid custodian. He's watching the animal or the vessels for free. And an unpaid custodian, a shomer chinam, is only chayiv for poshea, for negligence, but geneva va'aveda he would be potter for. But he would have to swear that it, in fact, got stolen. I think that there's a few things he has to swear. He would have to swear that it got stolen. He would have to swear that he was not sholeach yad, and I think he would have to swear that he wasn't poshea. I think. Maybe also one of them is that we're going to see later today, Rav Huna's opinion, that he has to swear that he doesn't have it. I don't remember if that's one of the three swears. We're going to have to, I imagine it's going to come up soon. But anyways, so he swears that it was stolen from him, and then he doesn't have to pay. So v'nignevu o she'avdu, and so the animal or the vessels got stolen or lost. So shilem v'lo rotza lishava. If Ruvain did not want to swear that it got stolen and be off the hook, instead he said, I'd rather just pay Shimon. So Shari Amru Shomer Chinam Nishba v'yotze, because Meikar Adin, a Shomer Chinam can just swear that it got stolen and then he's off the hook. Nimtza Aganif, so if the Ganif is ultimately found, so then Mishalim Tashlume Keifel, so then the Ganif needs to pay Keifel, twice the amount of what he stole. Tavachumach Mishalim Tashlume Abba Vachamisha, as we know about from Masechta Bava Kama, if it was a sheep or a cow, if it was Toveach Umocher, if he slaughtered it or sold it, so he has to pay 4 times the amount for a sheep, 5 times the amount for a cow. Now, Lemi Mishalim, so who would the Ganif pay Kefel or Dalet Vehei to? Well, in this case, Lemi Shapi Kodon Etzlo, he would pay it to Ruvain, the one who's the custodian, who's guarding, who's watching the animal or the vessels, because since he paid Shimon for it rather than swearing and being off the hook, instead he paid Shimon. So since he paid Shimon, in the event that the Ganif is found, the Ganif would pay Kefel or Dalet to Ruvain. Nishba v'lo l'shalim, but if Ruvain would prefer to swear that it was in fact stolen, and he would then be off the hook, leaving Shimon with the loss, well then Nimtza Haganif, if the Ganif is found, Mishalim Tashlume Kefel Tavachumach Mishalim Tashlume Abba Vachmisha Lemi Mishalim, and who would he pay in that case? Levala Pikodin. He would pay to Shimon in that case, because until they until they caught the Ganif, Shimon lost the value of the animal or the vessels. So and then when the Ganif is caught, so then Kefel or Dalet Vehei would be paid to Shimon. Okay, so if Ruvain pays Shimon instead of swearing, so then Ruvain would get the kefel or the daled v'hei. If Ruvain swore to get off the hook, so then the kefel or daled v'hei would go to Shimon. Says the Gemara, Lomalei lemisnei behema v'lomalei lemisnei kelim. How come the Mishnah had to discuss both the scenario of an animal as well as vessels? Could it not have only given the case of animals or just vessels? Would that have been enough? So we say, tzriche, we actually need both animals and vessels, the itana behema, because if the Mishnah would only list animals, hava amina behema hu demakne le kfila, that it is only when it comes to an animal that Shimon, the owner of the animal, would be makne to Ruvain, the kefel and the daled v'hei, mishum denofish tircha le'ayule v'la'afuke, because it's a lot of work for Ruvain to, bring the animal in, take the animal out, grazing, and I think all sorts of stuff like that. It's a lot of work. So therefore, meaning the way that it works is like this. Okay, the Gemara is going to discuss shortly, right after this, exactly how this kinyan works. But let's just say it's like this: that be'etzem, when Shimon gives the animal to Ruvain to watch, so he's giving it to Ruvain, and Ruvain is then right. So he's being moser the animal to Ruvain. Ruvain is moshechit, right? Makes a kinyan meshicha, and at that time, Shimon is being makne to Ruvain. Right, because the animal belongs to Shimon, right? So really, when the ganef is found, Shimon is entitled to the kefel and the daled v'hei. But when Shimon gives the animal to Ruvain to watch, at that time, when he gives it to Ruvain, he's being makne the kefel and the daled v'hei in the event that the animal gets stolen. Since after all, Ruvain is doing so much work to bring it in and to bring it out, so therefore Shimon is willing, in recognition of that work, Shimon is willing to be makne the kefel and the daled v'hei to Ruvain in the event that the animal is stolen, that if Ruvain were to pay Shimon for the animal, so then Ruvain would be entitled to the kefel and the daled v'hei. So again, right, the tana behema, if we would only have the scenario of the behema hava amina, I would say, okay, behema hu demakni le kfila, that Shimon is makne the kefel and the daled v'hei to Ruvain when it comes to watching his animal. Mishum denofish tircha le'ayula v'la'afuka. It's a lot of work for Ruvain to bring it in, to bring it out. I think it's talking about like one second. Yeah, I think it's talking about like to bring it in, to graze and out and stuff. It's a bunch of work. Okay, so in recognition of that, Shimon will be makne the potential kefel and daled v'hei. Aval kalim, but a vessel to lo nafish terchayu, that you take the vessel, you put it down, you forget about it. There's not much that he needs to do. So therefore, Eimalo, I will say that Shimon is not makne the rights to the kefel by a vessel. Eimalo makne le kfila. Vitana kalim, and if we would only have the scenario of vessels, Havamina, I would think Kelimu demakni le kfila, that Shimon is davka makne the kefel when it comes to vessels, mishum de lo nafish kiflayu, because it's max kefel, right? When there's no tavach u'machar when it comes to vessels, and therefore maybe Shimon would only be makne the kefel to Ruvain when it comes to vessels, because at the end of the day, okay, he says, look, thanks for guarding my vessels. In the event that there's a theft and you pay me for them, you can keep the kefel. When it comes to an animal, where Shimon knows that if the animal gets stolen and slaughtered or sold, there could be a payment of daled v'hei, 4 or 5 times the amount, Shimon would not be makne that to Ruvain, and even if Ruvain pays Shimon, Shimon would still be entitled to these payments. Emalo maknile kfila tzrichos. I might think by the animal, he's not going to be makne the rights to the kefil and the dal v'hei to Ruvain, since it could potentially be a lot of money. So therefore, tzricha, we need both cases, both the behema and the kalim, to say that in the event that Ruvain pays Shimon instead of swearing, well then, if the ganef is found, the kefil and the potential dal v'hei go to Ruvain. Maskif lo Rami Bar Chome. Rami Bar Chome has a kasha on this whole thing, on this whole construct, right? Because basically, right, we're up until now, we're kind of assuming that the way, we're understanding that, or at least I'm understanding, that the way that this whole kinyan things works is that, let's say it's an animal. So the animal belongs to Shimon. Shimon deposits it to Reuven. Reuven's watching it. It still belongs to Shimon. Okay? If it gets stolen, it still belongs to Shimon. If the ganef is found, it still belongs to Shimon. Therefore, the kefel, the arba v'chamisha, belongs to Shimon. Now, if Reuven pays Shimon the value of the cow, if it was a cow, so Reuven pays Shimon the value of the cow. Okay, that's great, but Shimon still owes the cow, which means that, when the ganef is found, even though Reuven paid Shimon the value of the cow, okay, so maybe the principal amount will go back to Reuven to pay him back for what he paid Shimon, but Shimon still owes the cow. Any rights to kefil and dal v'hei still belong to Shimon, not to Reuven. So what technically makes the kefil and the dal v'hei now belong to Reuven and not to Shimon? I hope I'm not mixing up any names. What makes it now belong to Reuven and not to Shimon? So Shimon needs to be makneh his right to the kefil and the dal v'hei to Reuven, so that when the ganef is found, the kefil and the dal v'hei now goes to Reuven and not to Shimon. So we said, okay, maybe an appreciation for his hard work, whatever. So Shimon stipulates that if it gets stolen, and then Reuven pays him, so then he's being makneh Reuven to Reuven his rights to the kefil and the dal v'hei. But Rami Bar Choma isn't so cool with that, because that's why. But Shimon can't be makneh his rights to kefil and dalet v'hei to Reuven, because at the time that he gives the animal to Reuven, it's not yet stolen. There is no kefil v'dalet v'hei. So what he can't be makneh to Reuven something that doesn't exist, something that's theoretical. Right? So Shimon can't be makneh to Reuven something that's theoretical right now, which is that maybe there will be a future reality, in which case there's kefil, but Shimon can't be makneh to Reuven a potential future reality of kefil, the rights to that potential future kefil reality. And even according to Reb Meir, who says that a person can be, how is like an 11-year-old supposed to understand this stuff? But anyways, and even according to Reb Meir, who says that a person can be makneh a davar shelo ba le'olam, hanimile kigon peris dekel davide de asu. Okay, so Reb Meir would say you could be makneh a davar shelo ba le'olam, for example, something like, dates on a palm tree, which, okay, even if the dates haven't grown yet, they will. Right? It's a palm tree, it produces dates. So even if there aren't dates there right now, okay, there will be dates. So Reb Meir says that you could, be makneh the dates that will necessarily be coming in the future. But something like this, where aval hocha, but in our case, miyemer de migneva. How could Shimon be makneh to Reuven the kefil? Who says that it's ever going to be stolen in the first place? There could never be it's possible that there never will be kefil. And you know what? And even if it does get stolen, who says that the thief will ever be found? And you know what? Even if the thief is found, who says that the thief is actually going to have to pay the kefel, duma modeh umifter. Maybe the thief will be modeh b'knasa, right? He'll admit that he stole it, in which case modeh b'knasa is potter, so there won't actually be any kefel. So there's so many unknowns. How can Shimon be makneh his rights to kefel when kefel is so theoretical that it's not something that can be makned to Reuven? Omar Rava, so says Rava, is not actually being makneh the kefel. He's actually making a kinyan al tanai for the cow itself, and the cow exists, if we're talking about a cow. So basically, says Rava, we'll see it inside in a second, that when Shimon gives the cow to Reuven, he says to Reuven, you're gonna watch this cow, and under the condition that, in the event that if it were to get stolen and you pay me, well then you will own it from now. And the cow is a davar shabal olam. He's basically making a condition on the cow and saying, in the event, here's this cow to watch. If it gets stolen and you pay me the value of the cow, it will be yours from this very moment. And therefore, if it's Reuven's cow from this very moment, in the event that it gets stolen and he pays, well then obviously Reuven is entitled to the kefel, to the dalet v'hei, whatever it might be. Also, Omer Rava says, Rava naisek Omer lo, it's like Shimon says to Reuven, Lichshatignov, in the event that the cow gets stolen, v'tirtze, and you will prefer shalmeni, and you will want to pay me for it. Well then, Harei parasi knuyi lecha me'achshav. My cow belongs to you from now. And okay, if the cow belongs to Reuven, then obviously Reuven gets the kefil and the dalet v'hei. Maskef Reb Zera has a kasha. If that's the case, afilu gizoseu v'loduseu nan. But if that's the case, that Reuven owns the cow, then if it's a sheep, let's say, so then even its shearings or its children should belong to Reuven. Allah mitani, but why do we learn a brayso chutz migizoseu v'loduseu, that Reuven doesn't get the shearings or the children? He gets the kefil and the dalet v'hei, but he doesn't get the shearings or the children. Why not? He owns it. Rather says it's as though Shimon says to Reuven, I think what he's saying is that Reuven, if you pay me, if it gets stolen and you pay me, then you own it. You own the cow now, but except for, or the sheep in this case, except for its shearings and its children. What makes you assume that Shimon is saying that you'll own the cow from now except for the shearings and the children? Where am I? My psaka. Because stama de milsa, because we can assume that by default, shvacha de also me alma, that benefit that comes externally, for example, kefel and dalet v'hei, right? That would be coming from a theoretical potential ganif. Ovid inish de makne, Shimon would be makne that. Shvacha de migufa lo ovid inish de makne. But shevach of the guf itself, such as the shearings or the children, he will not be makne that. He would only be makne the things like kefel and dalet v'hei, which are coming from a potential ganif. Those who say Amar Rava says Rava naise ka Amarlo lichshatigane v'tirtze, that Rava says that that Shimon is saying to Reuven that in the event that the cow gets stolen and you will v'tirtze shalmeni and you will pay me, samuch lignevasa knuyalach, it will belong to you not now but close to right before it was stolen. Right? So in the event that the animal gets stolen and you will pay me for it, well then the animal belongs to you from the instant right before it gets it was stolen. From that point, it will belong to you, not from the time of the beginning of the guardianship, of the custodianship. What's the nafkamina between the two ways? Between if Reuven owns it from the time of the beginning of the custodianship or from just before it got stolen? Well, for example, Reb Zera's question about the gizoseh of ladoseh. Now I can understand why Reuven doesn't get the shearings or the children or the offspring, because the shearings and the offspring were from before, right? Were from before it got stolen, and at that point, Reuven didn't yet own it, because he only starts owning it just before it got stolen, at which point there already were shearings and offspring. Therefore, that's why it would not belong to Reuven. Alternatively, what if at the time that the animal got stolen, it was rolling the rushes down by the riverside? That it was not in Reuven's property at that time, it was grazing someplace. So if you say that Reuven takes ownership of it from right before it got stolen, but right before it got stolen, it was not in Reuven's property, it was out in some random place, therefore Reuven was unable to make a kinyan on it in that place. Because, right, you can't because how does this kinyan work? The kinyan works that when Shimon gives the animal to Reuven, right, it's like a kinyan meshicha, right? Reuven is going to make a kinyan meshicha on it, he's going to pull it, and he's making a kinyan on it. So if you say that, like the first way that Rava says it, that he's made that in the event that it gets stolen and Reuven pays Shimon, so then it belongs to Reuven from that very point. So then they're making a kinyan that in the event of a theft and a payment, so from that very moment of the kinyan, of the mesira, of the meshicha, from that very moment is when Reuven is going to take ownership of it. That works. But they would not be able to make a kinyan at that time for some future ownership. And in order for that future ownership to work, it would have to be in Reuven's property, so that Reuven could be kona it like that. That it could be in Reuven's property and it could be kona it in his property. But if it's out in some public area, like by the rushes down by the riverside, so then how could Reuven make a kinyan and it wouldn't actually belong to Reuven, and he wouldn't be able to get the dalad kef on the dalad vehei. Okay, the Mishnah had said shilem v'larotzu l'shava v'chulei, that if Reuven paid and he didn't want to swear, so Mebchia bar Abba Rabbi Yechanan lo shilem mamish, that when it says that Reuven paid, it doesn't mean that he actually paid Shimon. That once Reuven said, I'm going to pay, even though he didn't yet pay, but he said he was going to pay, that is enough, and he would get the kef on the dal vehei. Tnan shilem v'loratzu lishava, shilem in lo shilem lo. But one second, our Mishnah says shilem v'loratzu lishava. If he paid, davka, if he pays, then he gets the kef on the dal vehei. But if he doesn't pay, then he doesn't get it. So Ema Sefer, yeah, but what about the next part of the Mishnah? Nishba v'loratzu l'shalim. If he swore and he didn't want to pay, so time of lo rotza, harotza av bishlo shilim. So it's because he didn't want to pay, but if he wanted to pay, then that would be enough, and he would get the kef on the dal vehei. So it sounds like, so from the Sefer, it sounds like just, intending to pay is enough. Rather, we can't infer anything from our Mishnah, because from the Reisha it sounds like saying you're going to pay is not enough, but from the Sefer it sounds like saying you're going to pay is enough. So we can't learn out anything from our Mishnah. But we nonetheless have a brisa that supports Rabbi Yochanan, that if Reuven rents a cow from Shimon, now the assumption right now, it's machlokes, if a socher is considered like a shomer socher or a shomer chinam, the assumption for now is that a socher is considered like a shomer socher, a renter is considered like a shomer socher, who would be chayiv for gneva va'aveda. V'nigneva, and the cow was stolen from Reuven, and therefore he would be chayiv for gneva v'aveda. Ve'omar hala, and Ruvain says, Harini mishalim beinu nishba. Now, if it were a scenario of, one second. Yeah, exactly. So, there's a Rashi basically right to the right of it. It says, Asocher par v'nigniva v'chulei. Hafalpisha asocher chayiv b'gniv v'aveda. So even though a renter is chayiv for gniv v'aveda and it got stolen, so you'd be chayiv. Mikomakim emrotze l'shaker, if you'd want to lie, v'nishba shenensa, and to swear that it got, that it was, that there was an ones. Hayaniftar b'shvua, you'd be part of b'shvua. Hilchach ki omer nigniva v'chiyeh b'atzmo b'keren niknelo akefel. Therefore, even though he could have falsely said that, right, that it was ones, and he would be potter in that case, but instead he says, you know what? It was stolen and I'm going to pay you. Right? So, when we have Omer hala areini mishalim, and he says, you know what? I'm going to pay you. I'm not going to swear. Ve'eni nishba, I'm not going to swear falsely that it was ones. Rather, I'm going to, say, look, call a spade, it was stolen, and I'm going to pay. And then the ganef is found. So kefel is paid to the renter. So it doesn't say that he actually paid it. It just says that he said that he was going to pay. That's enough. And he gets the kefel. Amar Papa says, Papa shomer chinam. When it comes to a shomer chinam, kevin she'omar poshaiti, if he said that he was posheya, which is the only time when a shomer chinam would have to pay, if he says that he was posheya and therefore he needs to pay, maknele kfila, well then he will get the kefel at that point. Because he could have said that it got stolen or lost, but he didn't. He said it was posheya, that he's going to pay, so he gets kefel. Shomer socher, kevin she'omar Nigniva, if he says that it was stolen, maknele kfila, right? So if he says that it was stolen and therefore he has to pay, he gets kefel. Diboy poter nafshe b'shvur v'mesa, because he could have just said that it sort of died suddenly and randomly, and therefore it's ones, and he could have said that and sworn and been poter, but he didn't do that. He said it was stolen and he's chayiv, so therefore he gets the kefel from that time that he says that it was stolen. Shoel, a borrower, she'omer areini mishalim, who says that he's going to pay, lo maknile kfila, he doesn't get kefel. Right? If a shoel says, right, a borrower, right, who says that okay, it's gone, I'm going to pay you for it, he doesn't get kefel, because b'may hava le limifter nafshe, because how could he have been poter himself? The only time that a shoel, a borrower, is going to be poter is if the animal dies doing its normal work, right? Meaning if Reuven borrows, let's say, a cow to plow his field, and the cow dies while plowing the field, so Reuven will be poter for that. And that is uncommon. So therefore, a shoel is always going to have to. So the shoel is not going to get kefel. Those who say, Papa says, Papa shoel nami, that actually also a shoel that if he says I'm going to pay, makni lekvile, gets kefel, di boy poter nafshe b'meisa machmas melacha, because he could have in fact said, look, it died while it was doing its work, in which case he would be poter, but he didn't do that, so therefore he also gets kefel. Amle Rav Zvid says, Rav Zvid ach yomer Abaye, so Rav Zvid says to Rav Papa that Abaye said shoel ad yishalim, that a shoel actually must pay. It's not enough that he says that he's going to pay, he actually must pay. My time outcome, hoil v'chol hanoah shelo b'dibura lo makni lekvila. Because since when it comes to a shoel, a borrower gets all of the benefit. He gets to use the animal. He doesn't have to pay anything. So in that case, the owner, right, Shimon, who owns the cow, is not going to be makne the kefel, or, makne the animal, to Ruvain. In that case, since he's not getting any benefit, right? In a scenario where there is some kind of benefit that Shimon is getting, so then he'll be makne the kefel to Ruvain. But in a scenario of where he's lending it to Ruvain and Ruvain's getting all of the benefit, so then Shimon is not going to be makne the kefel, and Ruvain won't get it until he actually pays for the value, right? In the event that it gets stolen or whatever, so then only if Ruvain actually pays Shimon, at that point he will be able to get kefel. Okay. Tanakavasa de Rav Zvid, and we talk about brisa supporting Rav Zvid. Hashoel par michavero, that if somebody borrows a cow from his friend, right? That if Ruvain borrows a cow from Shimon, v'nigneva, and it gets stolen, v'kidem ashoel v'shilem, and then Ruvain pays Shimon, v'chakach nimtza aganif, and then the ganif is found, mishalim tashlum kefel ashoel. At that point, Ruvain would get kefel because he paid, but it's not enough to say that he's going to pay. So l'lishna kamadra papa vade lo abe tiyuvta. So according to the first version of Rav Papa, which was that when it comes to a shoel, even though he says that he's going to pay, he does not get kefel. Okay, so this brisa is not a contradiction, because what does the brisa say? The brisa says that when he pays, he can get the kefel. So Rav Papa is saying that even though he says he's going to pay, he doesn't get kefel. But when he does pay, then he gets kefel. Okay? But lelishna basra lema tavet yufte. But let's say that according to the second explanation of Rav Papa, which is that when it comes to a shoel, if he says that he's going to pay, so then he gets kefel at that point, since he could have said that it died in the process of doing its work. Well, then it sounds like the brisa would be a kasha on that second, explanation of Rav Papa, because Rav Papa is saying that once he says that he's going to pay, he gets the rights to the kefel, whereas the brisa is saying he dafka has to pay. So Rav Papa could say to you, mi alima mi masnisin, 1 second. You asked me a kasha from this brisa, which says that you have to pay. Is the brisa any stronger than our Mishnah, which also talks about shilem v'lo ratza lishava, that he dafka paid, and yet we're saying that it could be talking about where he said he's going to pay? Dekatoni shilem v'ukimna ba'amar, that it says that he paid, and we said we could be talking about where he says he's going to pay. Hachanami ba'amar. So here also in the brisa, when it says that he paid, it means he said he's going to pay. But midami, can you really compare the brisa and the Mishnah? Hasam lo katani kidem, acha katani kidem. The Mishnah doesn't say kidem v'shilem, but in the that he proceeded, that he went ahead and paid. Over here it says Yidavka went ahead and paid. So my kidem v'amar. So Republic could say no. Still, when it says kidem that he went ahead, it means he went ahead and he said he's going to pay, and we're saying at that point he gets kefel. Gabi socher ve'omar v'gabi shoel kidem shmamina davka katoni. But then the Gemara says, yeah, but the brisa that supported Rabbi Yochanan, right? Rabbi Yochanan had said that even once he says he's going to pay, then he gets kefel. And we brought a brisa to support him. And what did it say? What was the brisa? Tanakavas Rabbi Yochanan socher par mechaver v'nigna ve'omar halah. So in that brisa it talks about Omar. In this case it talks about Kidem V'Shilem. So we have, so therefore that proves that if it would have been enough to just say it, well, then it would have said, say it. But over here by the shoel it says Davka Kidem V'Shilem. So Shmamina Davka Katani. So that must mean that when it says to pay, it literally means to pay, not to say. If it was to say, it would have said to say. Midigabe adode Tanya, to which Rav Papa says, meh. Those brises weren't necessarily taught together. If both brises were taught together, and in the ratio it's talking about saying, and in the sefer it's talking about paying. Okay, clearly saying and paying are two separate things. But if they were taught, by two, in two separate places, this Tana taught this brisa, that Tana taught that brisa. This one said Omar, this one said Kidem v'Shilem. We can't necessarily be so medayik. They might both be referring to the same thing. So Shalinu l'tanoi devei Reb Chia devei Reb Oshaya. So they asked the students and the Tanoim in the Beis HaMedrash of Reb Chia and Reb Oshaya. Reb Chia and Reb Oshaya were the editors of the Tosefta, right? So therefore they asked with the students at the yeshiva of the Tanoim at the Beis HaMedrash of Reb Chia and Reb Oshaya, who knew the definitive brises, and they said V'amri Gabe Dadi Tan, and they said no, they were taught together. So therefore, yes, we actually can be medayik that when it says kidem v'shilem, it davka means that that the shoel pays, and only once he pays he can get the kefil. Okay, now the next chunk is just one big major teku. So I'm just going to do it kind of quickly. Pshita, it's obvious that Omer Eini Mishalim, if he says, I'm not going to pay you, and then he says, you know what, I changed my mind, I am going to pay you for the cow. Okay, so he says, I'm going to pay you. But what if he says, I'm going to pay you, but then he says, you know what, I'm not going to pay you. Do we say, okay, he changed his mind. Initially he said he was going to pay, now he's saying he's not going to pay. Or maybe he still intends to pay, but he just doesn't want Shimon to drive him crazy, so he says, I'm not going to pay. But he still, in his mind, he does intend to still pay. So what about the kefil? Who does it go to? What if Reuben says he's going to pay, but then he died? And his children that said to Shimon, we're not going to pay you. So what's the halacha? So are the children reneging on their father's commitment? Or maybe no, they are sticking to their father's commitment and they are going to pay Shimon. They just want Shimon to leave them alone, so they say we're not going to pay you, but they really do still intend to pay. Shilmu banim, and what if Reuven's children paid Shimon? Right, so Reuven died and his children paid Shimon. Matzu Amar Lehu, can Shimon say to them, look, ki aknoi kfilo la'avuchon, look, when I was makne the kefel, it was to your father, David li niach nafshoi, that he did me a favor, and therefore I was makne the kefel to him. Ledidchu lo, but I wasn't makne kefel to you. Odumaloshno, maybe it makes no difference. Just like he was makne the kefel to the father, he was also makne the kefel to the children. Shilem nevonim. What if Reuven paid Shimon's children? Matzu Amrle, could they say to Reuven, Ki akne loch avuna kfilo devadet le naich nafshe. Look, our father was makne the kefil to you because you were doing him a favor. Haval anon ledidon lo, but you didn't do us any favors, therefore they're not. Therefore Reuven can't get the kefil. Odilma, or perhaps lo shna, maybe it makes no difference. Shilmu banim levanim. What if Reuven and Shimon are both dead, and Reuven's children pay money to Shimon's children? So what happens in that case? Shilem mechzo. What if Reuven paid for half of the value of the cow? Does he get half the value of the kefil? And dalvei shoal shtei peris. What? Shoal shtei paris v'shilem achas mein. What if he borrowed 2 cows and he paid for one of them? So can you get the kefel for that one? What if he borrowed from partners and he paid back one of the partners for the partner's share? What if partners borrowed and one of them paid back for his share? What if person borrowed from a woman and paid the husband? Isha sheshala v'shilin baila mai. What if a woman borrowed and her husband paid back? Okay, now we get to this very interesting opinion of Rav Huna that I believe we have seen before. Yeah, we've seen it before. So here is this interesting opinion of Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, Rav Huna mashbiin also shvuah she'ena bir shu so. So if Reuven pays Shimon, okay, so Shimon deposits his cow by Reuven, it gets stolen, Reuven pays Shimon for the cow. So says Rav Huna that Reuven, though, still needs to swear to Shimon that he doesn't have it. My time, how come? Because Chashin and Shema Ein of Nosan Bo. We're concerned, you know what? Maybe Reuven said, you know what? I really like this cow. You know what? I'm going to tell Shimon that it was stolen, and I'm going to pay him for it. And I'll keep it myself. So therefore, Reuven needs to pay Shimon, what? Reuven needs to swear to Shimon that he himself doesn't have it, that it really is in fact stolen, and that he himself does not have it. Meisvei, we have a very interesting question. Hamalve es chavero al hamashkon. Shimon lends a sela to Reuven. So, a sela is 2 shekels. 1 sela is 2 shekels. 1 sela is also 4 dinars, which means that 1 shekel is 2 dinars. Okay? So 1 sela is 2 shekels or 4 dinars. So now, Shimon lends a sela to Reuven. And Shimon says to Reuven, look, I would like you to give me a collateral. I would like you to give me some collateral. So Reuven gives him collateral. Shimon loses the collateral. So now, Hamalve es chaver al hamashkon ve'avad hamashkon. Shimon lent a sela to Reuven. Reuven gave Shimon a collateral. Ve'avad hamashkon, and the collateral got lost. Ve'omar lo. So Shimon says to Reuven, look, okay, Reuven, here's what happened. I lent you a sela. You gave me collateral. Look, Reuven, at the end of the day, your collateral was only worth a shekel, half a sela. Shimon says to Reuven, I lent you a sela, you gave me collateral that was worth a shekel, it was worth half a sela. And therefore, you owe me half a sela. Right? Obviously, you don't need to pay me for the collateral that I lost. I'm telling you the collateral was half a sela. So forget about that half, but pay me for the outstanding half sela. V'hala omer, but Reuven says, Loki, no. Ela sela il visani, olav sela haya shaveh. Reuven says, no. You lent me a sela. I gave you collateral worth a sela. Therefore, we're even. I don't owe you anything. He's kofer hakol. Reuven is denying. Right? Shimon's basically saying, Reuven, you owe me half a sela. And Reuven's saying, I don't owe you anything. So potter. So Reuven, of course, does not have to swear because he's kofer hakol. Seloil visicha olav shekel shove. If Shimon makes the same claim that I lent you a sela, your collateral, the collateral that you gave me, was only worth half a sela, 1 shekel. V'hala omer, and Reuven responds, Loki ela selil visani olav shlosha dinarim haya shove. But if Reuven responds and says, no, you lent me a sela, and I gave you collateral worth 3/4 of a sela. So basically, Shimon is saying, you owe me half a sela, and Reuven is saying, I owe you 1/4 of a sela. Right? So, he's being modeh b'miktsas, right? Shimon is saying, you owe me half a selah. And Reuven is saying, no, I owe you a quarter of a selah. So he's modeh b'miktsas chayev. Where am I? So then Reuven needs to swear because he's modeh b'miktsas. He has to swear. Now what happens if it's flipped? What happens if the tables have turned? Reuven is going on the offensive. Reuven is saying, actually, the collateral that I gave you was worth 2 selahs. Actually, Shimon, you owe me a selah now. Because you lent me a selah and I gave you collateral worth 2 selahs. You lost that. You actually owe me a selah now. Selah il visoni olav beiza yashave. If Reuven says to Shimon, look, Shimon, you lent me a selah. I gave you collateral worth 2 selahs. You lost that collateral. You owe me a selah. V'hala omer, and Shimon says, Loki, no. Ela selah v'sicha olav selah yashave. And Shimon pushes back and he says, no, I lent you a selah. You gave me collateral worth a selah. I don't owe you anything. Potter. So Shimon, of course, is Potter because he's kofar hakol. Right? Reuven's claiming that Shimon owes him a selah, and Shimon is claiming that he owes nothing. He's Potter. Selil visoni olav. If, however, Reuven says, look, you lent me a selah, shnayim ayashave, and the collateral that I gave you was worth 2 selahs. V'hala omer, and Shimon says, Loki, ela selil v'sicha olav, and Shimon says, no, I lent you a selah, hey dinarim ayashave, and the collateral that you gave me was worth 5 dinars, i.e., 1 1/4 selahs. So basically Reuven is saying, you owe me a selah, and Shimon is saying, I owe you a quarter of a selah. So he's being modeh b'miktsas chayev. So then Shimon is going to have to, right? Shimon is the lender, right? I hope I didn't confuse any names. Shimon is the lender. Reuven gave a collateral that Reuven is claiming was worth 2 selahs, and therefore, right? So Shimon lent Reuven a selah. Reuven claims that he gave Shimon collateral worth 2 selahs. Shimon says, no, the collateral that you gave me was worth 1 1/4 selahs, so I don't owe you 1 selah, I owe you a quarter of a selah, so therefore Shimon is being modeh b'miktsas, so then Shimon needs to swear to Reuven that he's telling the truth, that the collateral was in fact worth 1 1/4 selahs. Mi nishba, mi shapikadon etzlo. Right, so in this case, Shimon is the one who's going to have to swear. Wait, what? Okay, so 1 second. Mi nishba. No, so that's the shaila. Mi nishba, so who's the one who swears? Mi shapikadon etzlo. Shimon is the one who swears. Shami shavazeh v'yotzi alo es hapikadon, because we want to avoid a scenario where Reuven is going to swear about the value of the collateral, and then Shimon is going to take out the collateral out of nowhere, even though he claimed it was lost. All of a sudden Shimon's going to take out the collateral and prove Reuven wrong and make Reuven, if Reuven swore about it and then Shimon basically proved him wrong, so he's going to be puzzled, we won't trust him anymore. So we want to avoid that scenario. So therefore we have Shimon swear so that he can't later on take out the collateral and make a mess for Reuven. Aheya, now when we say that Shimon swears in order to prevent this scenario where he's going to invalidate Reuven, what's that going on? Ilema seifa. If it's talking about this seifa, when Reuven says that the collateral is worth 2 selahs and Shimon says it's worth 1 1/4 selahs, and we're saying that Shimon has to swear, well, obviously Shimon has to swear. That obviously Shimon, the lender, is going to have to swear in this case, because he's being modeh b'miktsas. Reuven is claiming that Shimon owes him now a selah. Shimon is saying that no, I only owe you a quarter of a selah. Shimon is being modeh b'miktsas. Of course he's going to be the one to swear. So Ella Amar Shmuel Aresha, rather Shmuel says that when we say that Davka Shimon, the lender, has to swear, is going on the Resha of when Shimon says I lent you a selah, but you only gave me collateral worth half a selah. You only gave me collateral worth half a selah, and therefore you owe me half a selah. And Reuven says, no, the collateral was worth 3/4 of a selah. I only owe you a quarter of a selah, basically. Right, half as much as you're saying. So Meikra, then Reuven should be the one to swear because he's the one being modeh b'miktsas. So my Reisha, a seifa de Reisha, it's talking about the seifa of the Reisha, which is Selil v'sicha olav. Shimon says, look, I lent you a selah, shekel hayashave, but the collateral was only worth half a selah. V'hala omer, and Reuven says, Loki ela selil v'sani olav, and Reuven says, no, you lent me a selah shlosha dinarin hayashave, but the collateral was worth 3/4 of a selah. So therefore, I don't owe you half a selah, I only owe you a quarter of a selah, chayiv. And we say that in that case, Mikra then Reuven needs to swear because he's being modeh b'miktsas. The shvur gabi lovehu, that Reuven's the one who has to swear Mikra then because he's being modeh b'miktsas. The Amar Rabbanan, and the rabbis say, nonetheless, l'shtaba malve, that Shimon should be the one to swear. Because we want to avoid a scenario, Shami Yishavazeh, we want to avoid a scenario where Reuven swears that it was worth, in fact, 3/4 of a selah, V'yotzi halas a pikadon, and then all of a sudden Shimon is going to pull out the pikadon and prove him wrong and be poselim, and that would be a problem. But here's the thing. Now here's the question. The question is, V'im isa l'Rav Huna, if Rav Huna, if we hold like Rav Huna, if Rav Huna is right, that when a custodian claims that a deposit is gone, the custodian needs to swear that the deposit is in fact gone. Well, then when Shimon is saying that the collateral got lost, Shimon should then have to swear that the collateral is in fact lost. And then this whole concern about, well, maybe Reuven's going to swear that the collateral is worth 3/4 of a selah, and then all of a sudden Shimon's going to pull it out. If Rav Huna is correct, that shouldn't actually be a concern, because Shimon would have already sworn that he doesn't have it, that it's in fact lost. So Vim Isa the Rav Huna, if in fact we hold like Rav Huna, well then Kevin de Mishtiba Malve, since Shimon is going to swear She'ena B'Shuso that he doesn't have the collateral, Heichi Motzi Mapikla, then how is this a concern that he might end up pulling out the collateral? He swore that he doesn't have it. So therefore, from the fact that we're concerned that Shimon might pull out the collateral later, and therefore we need Shimon to swear about the value of the collateral, so that he can't mess up Reuven, so it must be that Shimon is not swearing that the collateral is in fact gone. Because if he did, then how could we be concerned that he'd pull it out later? So Merava says, Rava, well, look, really, Shimon would, really, we do hold of Rav Huna, and Shimon should have to swear that the collateral is in fact gone, but Sheish Eidim She Nisrifa. In this case, there were witnesses that the collateral in fact got burnt up. That is why Shimon did not need to swear that he doesn't have it, because there were witnesses that said it got all burnt up. But if there are witnesses that it got all burnt up, then how can we entertain the possibility that Shimon can come up with it later? So Elam Rav Yosef, rather says of Yosef, Shes Eidim Shenigniva. Says of Yosef, well, there were witnesses in this case that it in fact got stolen, and therefore obviously Shimon doesn't have it. So therefore he doesn't have to swear that he doesn't have it, because there are witnesses that he doesn't have it. But but again, same question, then if that's the case, then why are we concerned that he might come up with it later? It got stolen. Well, even if there are witnesses that it was stolen and therefore he doesn't have it, we are nonetheless concerned that if Reuven swears that it was worth 3/4 of a selah, and Shimon is still, certain that it was only worth half a selah, and therefore he's owed more money, it will be worth it for him to do whatever he can to find that thief so that he can prove Reuven wrong, and we want to avoid that, so that is why we have Shimon swear. If that's the case, but then can't you say that, then how does if we're concerned that Shimon might go and do whatever he can to find this thief so that he can prove Reuven wrong, so then how does Shimon swearing fix anything? So what will happen is Shimon will swear that the value of the collateral was in fact half a selah, and Reuven will have to therefore pay Shimon half a selah. But then shouldn't we still be concerned? Litrach love that, wait, what? Reuven will have to pay Shimon half a selah, but Reuven is going to be all upset because he's convinced that the collateral was worth 3/4 of a selah. Therefore, he only owes 1/4 of a selah. And shouldn't we be concerned then that Reuven is going to go and find the thief so that he could prove Shimon wrong? Velese, and he'll bring the, so how does Shimon swearing fix anything? Now we should be concerned that Reuven is going to prove Shimon wrong. So Bishlama Malve Yoda Man Ka'il V'Nofak B'Beise V'Ozo V'Tarich U'Maisele. Yeah, but the thing is that it's a much higher probability that the lender, that Shimon will successfully track down the thief rather than Reuven. Shimon knows who's in his house. He can go back and trace back his steps. Who could have possibly stolen this collateral? And therefore he has a higher chance of finding the thief, whereas Reuven, right? How would Reuven know who was in Shimon's house? It's going to be much harder for him to find whoever stole this collateral. And therefore, yes, by Shimon swearing that the collateral was in fact worth half a selah, and that way he won't be able to, pull out the collateral later and prove Reuven wrong, because Shimon's the one swearing. We aren't super concerned that Reuven might find the thief and then take the collateral and prove Shimon wrong. Okay, but in general though, we would hold like Rav Huna that the person who claims that the deposit or the collateral was stolen would have to swear that they don't have it. In this particular case, it was not necessary since there were witnesses that it was stolen. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Givaldi. Abaye Omar says, Abaye Gezer Shema Yiton V'Yomar Lo Achar Shvua Mitzasiya. Abaye says, look, this doesn't necessarily prove wrong Rav Huna. Rav Huna says that Shimon would have to swear that he does not have the collateral. Okay. But even if Shimon swears that he doesn't have the collateral, that doesn't really solve the problem. Right? Meaning, okay, so you can have Shimon swear that he doesn't have the collateral. Okay. Now, Reuven says, right, so now Reuven, what's the scenario? The scenario is that Shimon lent Reuven a selah. Reuven gave Shimon collateral. Shimon claims the collateral is worth half a selah. Reuven claims that it was worth 3/4 of a selah. Reuven therefore needs to swear because he's modeh b'miktsas. Now, even if Shimon swears that he doesn't have the collateral, we should still be concerned that maybe he'll still pull out the collateral and be posel Reuven. I thought he swore he doesn't have the collateral. We'll say, he found it later. So therefore, we still have this concern that we don't want to be posel Reuven. So therefore, Shimon is the one who swears. Rav Ashi Omer says, Rav Ashi Zenishba v'Zenishba. Actually, both of them swear. Both of them actually swear. Zenishba she'ena b'shuso. Shimon swears that he doesn't have the collateral. V'Zenishba kama yoshave. Reuven swears that it was worth 3/4 of a selah. And this is what it's saying. Minishba tchila, who swears first? Malva nishba tchila. Shimon is the one who's going to swear first, because Shema Yishavazeh v'yotzi Allah es hapikodim. Because if Reuven were to swear first that it was 3/4 of a selah, and Shimon has not yet sworn, then we're concerned that Shimon might actually pull out the collateral and prove Reuven wrong. So therefore, what it means is that Shimon needs to swear first that he doesn't have it, like Rav Huna, and then Reuven swears that it's in fact worth 3/4 of a selah. Okay, Chavre, that was Daf Lamed Daled of Masechet BavaMetzia. We started Perek Hamafkid, very interesting Perek. Not so, it's very good, but it's hard for me to imagine that like little kids would have an easy time with this. Whew, not so easy, but all right. I guess get them thinking young. But anyways, yeah, we learned about the scenario where, right? So we started talking about Shomer. We talked about Shomer Chinam. We talked about Shomer Sachar. We talked about Shoel. We talked about Socher. We talked about all of these things that we talked about. So, for example, if you have a Shomer Chinam and he's watching an animal, and the animal gets stolen, and then the Shomer Chinam says, you know what, I'm going to pay for it. So then he gets the kefel. We talked about how exactly does that work? How is the owner of the animal makne the animal, the kefel essentially to the shomer? First of all, initially we had assumed that he was being makne just the kefel, but that we had some trouble with that because it's davar shelo bala olam. So then we had these two opinions of Rava, which is that he's being actually makne the entire animal. He's being makne the animal, right? The ownership of the animal. There's another opinion that he's being makne, right? The first opinion was that he's being makne from the time of the Mashiach. The other one was that he's being makne from just before it was stolen. There's different nafkaminas over there. Then we saw the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, who says that Reuven doesn't actually have to pay; he could just even intend to pay. Then there were questions about what about by Shoel? How does that apply to Shoel? We had a brisa which says that the Shoel would actually have to pay, but the others can say that they're going to pay. And then we saw the opinion of Rav Huna, who says that even if Reuven's going to pay Shimon, he still needs to swear that he himself doesn't have it, because we're concerned that maybe he liked it and he figured, you know what, I'll just pay and keep it for myself. Wow. Very interesting daf. That was Daf Lamed Daled, Masechet BavaMetzia. Hope you enjoy. Peace out.